It was in ancient Baghdad during the Islamic Golden Age that an astronomer named Bin Ghabi, while observing the movement of the heavenly bodies, stumbled upon what we today know as the Smurf Center, or as others would like to call it, the Smurf Sphere, a thin layer of Smurf colony approximately 300 feet above the sea level. It was the first time the world ever knew why the color of the sky is blue. The pigment present in the skin of the Smurfs is reflected vividly by the rays of the sun in a process called illumination. The rainbow is, of course, created by gay Smurfs. How do you know when someone is telling the truth or making stuff up? How do you know for certain if what you know is the truth? When you decide some information about something graduates from being mere information to actual knowledge? Or how do you separate facts from BS? Knowing what knowledge is and being able to tell apart truth from falsehood is not merely an epistemological question. It is not just for university professors to sit and sip their tea and try and come up with an answer to. The problem of knowledge affects how we make decisions, what is good for us and what isn't. Our beliefs are formed around true propositions. Say you're looking for a store in order to buy a bottle of water. Now your belief is that there is a store located towards the northeast of where you are. So you start walking in the northeast direction, only to find out that your belief was incorrect. In fact, the store is in the opposite direction. So now you're more thirsty. Also 1 kilometer away from the store. There is knowledge in terms of its linguistic meaning. To know is a verb, one of the most used verbs in fact, in almost all languages. I know which car I drive. I know the name of the person who invented the induction motor. I know wood comes from trees. I know 2 + 2 = 4. I know jujitsu a little bit. Then there's knowledge of doing things which I possess, such as driving, writing code, making sure the grocery does not take more than 1 trip. Yeah, that's a thing. And then there's knowledge from direct experience or acquaintance, such as knowing people, feeling pleasure or pain, etc. Here in our epistemological pursuit, however, we are interested in a particular kind of knowledge called propositional knowledge. A proposition is a statement or assertion that expresses a judgment or an opinion. In other words, it is something asserted in a sentence which says that something is the case. Paris is in France is a true proposition. The earth is flat is a false proposition. Okay, well, at least for the majority of the people. Now let us go back in time for a while to the year 399 BC. The hustling and bustling and philosophizing city of Athens sees a new dawn, and an old Socrates, incarcerated for corrupting the youth, narrates his dialogue with a young mathematician called Theaetetus. Socrates in his dialogue had asked the bright youth one simple question: what does knowledge mean? In response, Theaetetus had posited a number of definitions such as knowledge is perception, to which Socrates replies that perception is relative and the same wind blowing can be felt as warm by one and cold by another. Knowledge is true belief, says a committed Theaetetus next. Socrates, being Socrates, is again not convinced and raises questions regarding believing in something true and knowing something is true are two different things. Theaetetus comes up with a new definition. Knowledge, he says, is true opinion with an account, or what they called logos. What the hell is logos now? Well, it could be anything that distinguishes one thing from another. So if true belief could also have an additional content with it, then it might be called knowledge. But any additional content could very well be an opinion, says the old-timer. So they're back to square one and no adequate definition of knowledge is found. Theaetetus exclaims in conclusion, I think, I do not know that I do not know. Socrates gets up and leaves to face the jury and is eventually famously sentenced to death. Socrates dies knowing that he does not know. His knowledge, however, is not as little as Theaetetus because he knows that he knows nothing. Okay, so how do we know if the proposition that the sky is blue because of Smurfs living in it is a true proposition or not. To begin with, as human beings, we always start with some kind of a propositional attitude. In our case, we have a propositional attitude of disbelief, for we reject the existence of Smurfs. If, however, there is someone who believes in the truth of this proposition, is probed and inquired about why he believes in such a theory, then he would surely have to come up with some sort of an explanation, or better put, justification. The onus of proof rests on him because he is the one making the claim. What would one offer additionally beyond just true belief to qualify as a possessor of knowledge? In what is known as the classical account of knowledge, the additional ingredient or logos is known as justification, or evidence or support to prove your belief. So now if this guy ends up telling us that his uncle, after multiple Smurf sightings, befriended Papa Smurf on account of a shared interest in shrooms and stuff, and kept it a secret but only passed it down to this guy. So like a weird Bilbo Baggins of esoteric Smurf knowledge, but it doesn't end there. What if this guy, whom we can now safely call Mr. Smurf Frodo, successfully shows us a small pet Smurf that lives in his backyard? Two things will happen. One, our minds will be blown. Two, Mr. Smurf Frodo's knowledge can no longer be questioned. Knowledge as justified true belief took a brutal blow when American philosopher Edmund Gettier published a short paper which was later known as Gettier Cases. Gettier challenges the point of view that any justified true belief qualifies as knowledge. Here's an example. This is called the broken clock case. Imagine you wake up and suddenly someone asks you what time it is. You have no idea, so you look at the clock on the wall and tell them it's 3:30 p.m. according to it, which happens to be the correct time. However, the clock is broken. Even though your knowledge of the current time is correct and also justified, but you got it right by luck. You have a true belief, which is also justified, but that cannot be called knowledge. The sheep in the field case. Imagine that you're standing outside a field. You see within it what looks exactly like a sheep. So you believe there is a sheep in the field, and you're absolutely right, because there is a sheep behind the hills somewhere in the middle of the field. You cannot see the sheep though, and you have no direct evidence of its existence. Moreover, what you're seeing is a dog disguised as a sheep. Hence, you have a well-justified true belief that there is a sheep in the field, but is that belief knowledge? So, what do we know, and how do we know that we know? Simply getting it right is not enough for someone to be knowledgeable. Let's try to understand this with an example. Imagine you head outside and you observe a row of birds sitting on a wall. Now these birds could either be pigeons or not pigeons. Assume we don't know what pigeons look like, and therefore we need to come up with a method or procedure to identify pigeons. But in order for us to find out whether our method works or not, we need to know what pigeons look like. But that's why we wanted to come up with a procedure in the first place. So we run into this ancient problem known as the problem of Daedalus, or the vicious circle. So false beliefs, can they exist? False beliefs are just beliefs that we think are true. Otherwise, we would never believe a proposition if we did not think it's true. So false beliefs cannot exist. Only true beliefs exist. There's something called Meno's paradox. What that means is that if you know what you're looking for, then inquiry is unnecessary. And if you don't know what you're looking for, then inquiry is impossible. Therefore, inquiry is either unnecessary or it's impossible. Roderick Chisholm further classifies those people who choose to believe that there is certain knowledge that we just know, and we start from there to establish methods to find more knowledge. So we know stuff without knowing how we know stuff. These bunch of people are called particularists. The second group is called the Methodists, which tries to start from question 2. That is, let's get the method down first, and then we decide based on that method what knowledge is. They claim we cannot know stuff if we don't know how to know stuff. Let us take an example which was used by Descartes back in the day. If we have a pile of apples and we wanted to sort out the good ones from the bad ones, how would we commence? we need to first figure out which apples are good and which are bad. For you and I, it is clear that we can just look at the apples and see the ones that are good and the ones which are bad. But when we move from apples to what qualifies as knowledge, things get way more complex very quickly. In order for us to sort out knowledge from non-knowledge, we need to be able to recognize what legitimate items of knowledge look like. If we do not know that, then we need to devise a method to know that. As you might have guessed, a method can never be credible unless we know what we are looking for. So you see the vicious circularity inherently apparent in the problem. So it seems fundamentally we are stuck on the question, how do we justify our beliefs? And we can't seem to escape the following three options. 1. Our beliefs are supported by an infinite chain of justifications, which is known as infinitism. Each proof requires a further proof ad infinitum. Second, our beliefs are supported by a circular chain of justification, or what is known as coherentism. Proof of some proposition presupposes the truth of that very proposition. The proposition in question is the proof of itself. Or 3, our beliefs are unsupported, or what is known as foundationalism. We just assert stuff without proof, like axioms, and start from there. No justification is provided. You see, none of the three options is intellectually satisfying. Agrippa the skeptic is attributed with these questions in what is known as the Agrippan trilemma, and can be defined as a thought experiment intended to demonstrate the theoretical impossibility of proving any truth, even in the fields of logic and mathematics, without appealing to accepted assumptions. It is, I believe, at this point clear that we deliberately choose a way, and the choice is not necessarily based on what's closer to the truth, whatever truth means at this point, but what's convenient. We need methods to find knowledge and knowledge to form methods. One needs the other. So if a person believes a method ought to be identified first and then knowledge is sifted through it, is basing his approach on the same arbitrary logic as a person who says we know things without knowing how we know them. It is always dogmatic to commence the process of knowledge acquisition. The intentions, drives, assumptions, baselines, axioms always will be chosen in the pursuit of knowledge. A deliberate choice between whether I start by establishing there are things we just know, or there are methods we can trust to make sure we know what we know. John Locke said for anything to be considered a true belief, it must be perceived by the senses. Only then it can qualify as a legitimate input for knowledge. But he never explained how he arrived at this conclusion. This approach, of course, is what we refer to now as empiricism. David Hume subsequently also became a staunch proponent of empiricism. According to him, if anyone asserts anything which isn't empirical, then we should commit it to the flames, for it can contain nothing but sophistry and illusion. But empiricism, Mr. Hume, also rests upon dogma. Hume's skepticism woke me out of my dogmatic slumber, Immanuel Kant had said. Knowledge is not possible because the evidence of the external world cannot be provided, barring what our senses tell us. So what are we doing then, Mr. Hume? Wasting our time trying to gain knowledge and doing philosophy and stuff? No, that can't be true. So like a true nerd, Kant goes to work and brings about what is called the Copernican Revolution in philosophy. That is, fundamentally altering the way we perceive and understand the world. In his most original contribution, Kant asserts that it is the representation that makes the object possible rather than the objects that make the representation possible. This made the human mind essentially as an active originator of experience rather than just a passive recipient of sense data. We receive different kinds of inputs via our senses, such as oral, visual, and tactile data, but we do not, through some sort of a deliberate mental multiplexing technique, bring it together as a single item of experience. We just experience it, and we do not put together everything consciously. Our mind does that automatically for us. Therefore, our minds certainly possess innate abilities to identify, process, and project the reality that we perceive. Kant called these innate abilities the categories of the mind. Our minds are not tabula rasa or clean slate as John Locke, among many others, suggests. Take, for example, the idea of space. It is not a learned concept, but something that we just know. Nothing we perceive can be outside the concept of space. It is therefore a limitation of our mind. Suppose if everyone was born wearing green glasses at Kant, the world and everything in it would be green for them as an absolute fundamental fact of reality. Moreover, they can't remove the glasses. So keeping that in view, at least two kinds of worlds must exist. One, the world as we perceive it, which is green, and time and space are constructs of our minds. Kant called this the phenomenal world. The second type of world which must exist as a consequence is a world which is not green, with things in themselves and time and space do not exist. Kant called it the nominal world. If our green world exists, which it certainly does, then a non-green world must also exist. You see, we cannot reject such a world by the virtue of what is. And since it is impossible for us to ever be able to remove our green glasses, Kant says there is no way for us to ever perceive or have access to the world as it is. Is that really the case? What if we are able to detach ourselves from this simulation enforced by our minds? What if we're able to remove the green glasses and are able to look at the world of noumena the way things really are and not how we perceive them? Could such a knowledge exist? In Islamic Sufism, a complete epistemology of its own claims just that. The whole paradigm of knowledge and its possibilities is spun over its head. Take, for example, Muhyiddin ibn Arabi. Knowledge is for the heart to acquire something as that thing is in itself, whether the thing is non-existent or existent. Knowledge is the attribute gained by the heart through this acquisition. The knowledge is the heart, and the object of knowledge is that acquired thing. Notice that the emphasis has been shifted from the mind or the intellect being the primary faculty of inquiry towards the heart as the receptacle of knowledge. Not merely that the paradigm further regards intellect as a second great faculty by the virtue of its fallibility and to be biased and corrupted. There is a kind of knowledge that exists which cannot be obtained through reading books or learning or studying with a teacher. It can only be obtained by spiritual practice, by following the path of God and His prophets, and by meditating in solitude. Because the spiritual path safeguards the heart from obfuscations, knowledge gained by reflective consideration is always prone to obfuscation and error, and therefore can never be trusted. According to Ibn Arabi, all knowledge is divided into three levels. The first level is knowledge of the intellect, or ilmul aql. Contrary to the separation ordained by the Western philosophy, both empirical and rational knowledge is contained within the same category. It is safe to say that the concept of intellectual knowledge is much more nuanced in Muslim teachings. Ibn Arabi further divides mental activities into the following categories. There is reasoning, which he calls al-aql. There is thinking, or tafakkur. There's something called reflection, or nazar. And finally, khayal, or imagination. Second is the knowledge of the spiritual states, or ilmul ahwal. It is also called zawq, or taste, a knowledge that can only be alluded to and described by the people of taste. Ahle dhawq. Only a person who has tasted the sweetness of honey can explain what it tastes like. And when a Sufi in his journey stumbles upon the same taste, can recognize it immediately. But this knowledge cannot be acquired via any other channel. Only people of the taste can fill you in on that. The third type of knowledge, according to Ibn Arabi, is the knowledge of the secrets, or ilmul asrar. It is a knowledge possible through the blowing of the Holy Spirit into the heart, and it is specific to the prophets or the friends of gods, or walis. The light illuminated directly onto the hearts by God Himself and is not tempered by reason. The possessor of this ilm knows and exhausts all the sciences. True knowledge is unveiled by God without the intermediary of reason, reflection, or any other faculty. Is all knowledge valuable, however? Is it always good? The Islamic epistemology defines what is useful knowledge and what is not. The term ilmun nafi, or beneficial knowledge, is defined as any knowledge which brings one closer to God, be it the knowledge of the cosmos, our inner beings, science and mathematics, and so forth. All which increases a man in his faith is useful knowledge, for it is by the God and towards God everything returns. Rumi tells a tale of an illiterate boatman, simple in his ways and far away from the world of pride and hypocrisy. An egotist scholar is taking a ride with him and asks the boatman, "Have you studied any grammar?" The boatman replies, "No, I have not." "Half of your life has gone to waste," says the scholar. The boatman obviously became disturbed in his heart and felt insulted, but kept silent from answering at that moment. The boat soon starts to rock as it is hit by a storm, and the boatman asks, "Do you know how to swim?" The scholar replies, "Oh, good-natured and handsome man, no, I do not know how to swim." The boatman replies, "Well then, my friend, the whole of your life is going to go to waste now." Al-Ghazali walked the treacherous way of the intellect, and through reason and inquiry longed to unveil the ultimate truth, only to fail, gave up and called it quits. His return saw him accept the Sufi way and had his heart illuminated by God the Almighty with knowledge and acceptance. He said, "Dear friend, your heart is a polished mirror. You must wipe it clean of the veil of dust that has gathered upon it, because it is destined to reflect the light of divine secrets." Is knowledge possible without an end in mind? Every instance of knowledge that we make an effort towards starts with an intent and purpose. Why do I need to know whatever I'm trying to know? Knowledge takes time and effort after all. If it didn't, it would be mere information. The need to want to know something is a trigger which is often beyond our conscious mind. Why do I want to know certain things and not others? Or where does curiosity come from? Why do some people feel the need to quench their thirst for knowledge and travel far and away lands and meet people who have new insights to offer? Read books, observe and measure and probe and pry, because ultimately what they want is to maximize their true beliefs and minimize the false ones. Why are other people not the same? Why isn't everyone equally curious? Whether the earth is flat or not, did man really put a foot on the moon, or was it a hoax? Is gravity a pulling force or a pushing force? It does not matter to them, and they are content with their lives knowing only what is required. This required, however, is an interesting thing. Our curiosity defines what would suffice as the needed knowledge. Is there any end to our curiosity? Is there any end to our stupidity? There's always an intent involved in whatever we do, and seeking knowledge is no different. Even if our purpose is to seek knowledge for the sake of seeking knowledge, that is still an intent. We find ourselves uncomfortable when we know that we don't know. We try to fill the gaps with all sorts of things, and often with undefined placeholders, answers we hope one day we will find. For example, when DNA could not explain everything, we discovered epigenetics. When we couldn't know how the galaxies are spinning even with a meager observable and measurable mass, we assign a placeholder for the unknown and call it dark matter. Let us try to reflect over some of the things that we have learned so far about knowledge and about facts. Clearly, there are things that I know, and then there are things that I don't know. Wow, such an insight. Some of the things that I know, I'm also able to produce justification for. However, there are also things that I cannot provide the justification for, which may also be true. If I would like to claim that I have knowledge, then perhaps I should only believe in things which I can justify. Truth itself has no duality. Something is either true or it's false. Justification for the truth, however, has gradations. Some of the truths are more justified than other truths. Some of the things that I believe and I have the justification for, the justifications are there by the virtue of some of the other things that I believe in. Some of the things that I know require empirical justifications only, whereas there are other things that I know and I'm justified in believing, and I have justification for those, but those justifications are not empirical, and they don't have to be. Knowledge links a person with a fact. Facts are indisputable. Truth can be comprised of facts. Truth can also be comprised of beliefs. Beliefs could be based in untruth. True beliefs have an intrinsic value as we can reach other truths with them. We can also achieve our goals knowing that where we're headed is indeed the right direction. There is clearly value in knowledge, But we need summaries and bullet points. We don't have time and energy to find truth. And frankly, we don't care. If our beliefs follow the popular belief, we're good. We like knowledge. Knowledge is nice, but we need it to be told to us loud and clear, with visual aid preferably, and a nice background score. And all that under 3 minutes max. Better yet, if it could fit into a 30-second TikTok video. Ancient history, the knowledge of the cosmos, special relativity, the pyramids, the Bolshevik Revolution, why did Napoleon lose in Russia? It's good to know all that, but it shouldn't take time. If it's too long, dull, and drab, I will swipe to the next one. There's a competition in place, it seems, which I'm actively a part of, where I have no control over what I want to know, but only must choose from what is in front of me. The choices I have are many, but none of them are my own. Before I take your leave, let me share this little anecdote with you. A horse was crossing a pond. A squirrel sighted him and dashed towards the pond and asked him, "Hey, horsey boy, how deep is the water?" The horse replied, "Not much. It's ankle deep." The squirrel said, "Cheers, mate," and hurriedly walked right into the pond and instantly began to drown. "Hey you said the water was ankle deep?" The horse replied, "Well, it is most certainly ankle deep for me." "Why did you say that then?" "Listen, shorty, this is not how it works. You either ask the exact questions or not be too dumb to figure it out on your own." Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.